So, our mission today is to really unpack the intricate rules, the requirements that govern such a profound shift, understanding not just the what, but the deeper why behind it all.
Yeah.
You're going to discover the maybe surprising speed that's expected for this kind of change, the really detailed steps involved, and how basically every single financial interaction gets reevaluated under Shari'ah principles.
What's really fascinating here, I think, is how precisely this standard defines its scope, its boundaries.
Okay.
It focuses specifically on the fundamental elements of converting a traditional bank into an Islamic one. And that could be, whether the transformation is started internally by the bank's own decision,
Right.
or externally, maybe through an acquisition by folks who specifically intend to convert it.
So we're talking about a complete top-to-bottom overhaul then, not just like putting a new sign on the door.
Precisely. It's total. It addresses the crucial timeline for this conversion, the profound impact it has on how the bank receives funds, how it uses funds, and how existing obligations and rights, both the ones they've already received and the ones they haven't yet, are meticulously handled. It also dictates this rigorous process for, disposing of any unlawful assets the bank held before.
That makes perfect sense for a true transformation, but what doesn't it cover? Because sometimes what's left out tells you just as much.
That's a good point. The standard explicitly says it doesn't delve into, say, the permissible activities of conventional banks or their earnings if they just stay conventional.
Okay.
Nor does it cover the process of merely setting up Islamic branches or departments within a traditional bank. This isn't about adding a Sharia-compliant arm. It's about a full institution-wide paradigm shift.
That immediate requirement you mentioned, that's quite striking. It really kind of challenges the usual gradual reform models we see elsewhere. What's the core principle driving such an urgent, comprehensive shift rather than, phasing it in?
Well, the standard is really unequivocal on this. The conversion has to be total and immediate.
Wow. Total and immediate.
Yeah. It means all the Sharia requirements have to be implemented without delay, and every single new operation must strictly adhere to Sharia rulings from day one. It really underscores the philosophical core of Islamic finance, this idea that ethical integrity isn't something you can just sort of ease into.
Right.
It's an all-or-nothing commitment.
Yeah.
And that reflects a deep spiritual foundation that underpins, every transaction.
That's a powerful principle. So what about any ongoing conventional operations the bank might have had just before this immediate conversion kicks in?
The principle is dispose of them instantly.
Instantly.
Only in cases of, say, extreme necessity or perhaps genuine need can there be a temporary delay. But what's really crucial here is that a phased conversion just isn't recognized at all.
Yeah.
A bank that's undergoing some partial gradual shift is not considered a converted Islamic bank.
Yeah.
It won't be listed among Islamic financial institutions. The standard really emphasizes the urgency of stopping any activities seen as unlawful.
So if a bank earns what's considered forbidden profits, maybe from, a conventional loan that's still active during this immediate conversion period, how are those treated?
Right. Those forbidden profits. So any income derived from things like interest or maybe transactions involving prohibited goods, they have to be accounted for properly. There are clear guidelines on handling them. They can't just, vanish.
A transformation of this magnitude, it must require a pretty serious to-do list. What are the practical mandatory steps involved in truly changing the bank's DNA?
Yeah, it's huge. For a successful conversion, it's definitely not just about changing the ledger. It's about remaking the entire organization. This includes preparing all the necessary tools and resources, finding Sharia-compliant alternatives for basically every single existing operation.
Every single one.
Yeah, and rigorously training and qualifying the personnel, the staff, so they can operate under these Islamic principles.
It sounds like it's as much about the people and the culture as it is about the financial systems themselves.
Absolutely. Then, on the regulatory front, the bank has to amend its license, update its articles of association, its fundamental bylaws.
A lot of paperwork.
A lot of paperwork. It also needs to revise its internal regulations, operational systems, job descriptions, employment conditions. Often you're looking at a complete organizational restructuring to align everything with a new Sharia-compliant model.
And what about the core Sharia oversight itself? How does that actually get established?
That's a critical step. You have to establish a Sharia supervisory board. That provides independent oversight.
Okay.
And you need robust internal Sharia auditing processes too. All contracts, all documentation, It all has to be revised or created fresh to conform explicitly with Sharia principles. The bank also needs to open new Sharia-compliant accounts with other banks, domestically and internationally, and sort out any existing accounts with conventional banks.
That level of restructuring, it sounds almost like building a whole new bank from the ground up rather than just converting an old one. Is that like an accurate way to think about it?
It's very accurate, actually. The bank has to take all the necessary steps to apply the accounting, auditing, and governance standards issued by AAOIFI, right from day one, ensuring full transparency, full compliance. It's a complete shift in operational philosophy.
So once a bank makes this fundamental shift, how does it then interact with the wider financial world, especially traditional banks, central banks even?
Yeah, the standard mandates a fundamental change there, too. How the bank deals with central banks, whether it's for, say, liquidity management or other operations. But the most crucial point is correcting all dealings with conventional banks by strictly avoiding riba, interest.
No, Reba, that's the absolute cornerstone, isn't it? A direct rejection of just profiting from money over time.
Precisely. It shifts the whole focus. Earnings have to come from tangible economic activity, from shared risk. So the bank has to use only Sharia-acceptable financial formulas. And furthermore, the standard actively encourages expanding relationships with other Islamic financial institutions.
Okay, so building that network.
Exactly. Things like opening current and investment accounts among themselves, facilitating transfers, letters of credit, engaging in Sharia-compliant syndicated finance, building that ecosystem.
Okay, let's think about the customer then. For the individual or any entity using the bank's services, what tangible changes can they expect? If interest is completely out, what kind of, ethical alternatives step in?
This is really where the innovation in Islamic finance comes to the fore. The bank is strictly forbidden from collecting interest on any services, period.
Right.
Instead, it has to offer Sharia-compliant alternatives for all banking services. And this means profit gets generated through real economic activity, not just from, the passage of time or the use of money itself.
So we're talking about a fundamental shift away from interest-based fees towards income that comes from actual services provided or genuine partnerships, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The bank cannot charge a commission just for providing access to facilities. Any fees, any earnings must be directly tied to actual executed operations that adhere to Sharia rulings. This ensures the bank earns money ethically, either through sharing risk or through legitimate trade.
A critical aspect of this conversion is reevaluating the bank's existing funds and how it gets new ones. It sounds a bit like a financial detox, actually.
It is, in many ways. The bank must liquidate all the effects of its previous forbidden operations. This includes reevaluating the terms for deposited amounts, preferred shares, any interest-bearing investment certificates, loan bonds. It really is about cleaning house, making sure all the capital aligns with Sharia.
So how does an Islamic bank then get the liquidity it needs to operate? Without resorting to those interest-based instruments, what are their creative options?
That's a good question. The standard outlines several permissible ways to get liquidity. For instance, the existing equity holders, the owners, they can increase their capital contributions.
Okay, put more skin in the game.
Right. The bank can also attract new investment accounts and current accounts. These operate on profit sharing or non-interest basis, where depositors might share in the bank's actual profits, or they simply offer their funds for safekeeping.
And what about the more complex financial instruments, the ones that are maybe unique to Islamic finance?
Yeah, there are several. They can issue Islamic sukuk.
Yeah.
These are Sharia-compliant bonds, basically. But they're often structured as partnerships or asset-backed instruments. They represent ownership in tangible assets or ventures.
So tied to something real.
Exactly. They can also engage in salam or istisna contracts. These are essentially forward purchase or manufacturing agreements. The bank acts as a seller or manufacturer, earning profit through real trade, not interest. Another common tool is murabaha operations, cost-plus financing for specific assets. They can even sell some of the bank's assets and then lease them back, provided there's no impermissible link between the sale and the lease.
Right. There are strict rules around that. What if the bank's existing capital, or maybe its reserves, grew specifically because of past forbidden dealings? How are those handled?
Any capital or reserves like that, they have to be treated in the same way as unlawful rights, which means the bank itself cannot benefit from them. They must be disposed of, as we'll discuss, often through charitable means.
We've touched on disposing of unlawful income and assets in different scenarios, depending on how the conversion happened. Let's zoom out now and think about the overarching philosophy. What's the absolute non-negotiable principle for any forbidden earnings from before the conversion, regardless of how they came about?
Right. If it is at all possible, the bank must immediately dispose of all such unlawful earnings without delay.
Immediately.
Immediately. If immediate disposal just isn't feasible for some practical reason, okay, it can be done in stages. But the absolute key principle is that these funds, whether it's interest or other unlawful earnings, they must be spent on good deeds, public welfare projects, or charity.
So the bank itself gets zero benefit from it. It's purely about purifying the assets.
Zero benefit. Absolutely not. The standard explicitly states the Islamic bank must not benefit from these funds in any way, shape, or form. It's entirely about purification, ensuring the bank operates with complete integrity under its new Sharia-compliant identity.
Okay, we've covered the bank's income and assets pretty thoroughly. Now, what about its debts? Its obligations from before the conversion? How does the bank deal with those?
This also kind of depends on the conversion type, you see. If it's an internal conversion.
Where the bank decided itself.
Exactly. Regarding existing interest-bearing payments it owes, the bank should only pay the interest if there's absolutely no other way out, like it's a matter of dire necessity. And for commitments it made to provide forbidden services. The bank has to try its best to cancel these, return any funds it received, maybe even offer compensation if needed to get out of it.
And if the bank was acquired by an external party specifically to be converted, does that change how it handles existing obligations?
Yeah, slightly. If it was possible to exclude those unlawful rights and obligations from the purchase agreement in the first place, Sharia requires that they do that.
Makes sense.
If it wasn't possible, then, okay, it's permissible to acquire them as part of the deal.
Mm-hmm.
But the new owners then have this duty to work diligently to terminate those obligations quickly. Even if it means negotiating, say, a reduction in the amounts owed by paying early, the principle is always swift cessation of anything unlawful.
And what about, say, unlawful pledges or collateral? Stuff the bank might still be holding from its conventional days.
The bank should proactively release any unlawful pledges on its assets. If it was an external acquisition, the purchase agreement should ideally include solutions for substituting these pledges with the seller, basically ensuring the bank's assets are free from any impermissible ties going forward.
Okay, finally, let's talk about zakat, the obligatory charity in Islam. How are zakat obligations handled during this whole transformation? Is it based on the old owners or the new Islamic entity?
This also depends on the conversion model.
Mm-hmm.
If the bank is converted through acquisition by new owners,
Right, the external route.
then the new owners are not obligated to pay zakat for the period before their acquisition. That zakat obligation falls squarely on the previous owners. The new owner's zakat clock starts ticking from the day they acquire it and the bank converts.
And if it's an internal conversion, where the same ownership group decides to convert?
In that case, if the bank converts internally and the zakat for the prior period wasn't paid for whatever reason, then the shareholders themselves are responsible for paying that zakat. Even if the funds it was due from were considered unlawful at the time, it's seen as a personal obligation tied to their beneficial ownership during that period.
What an incredible journey, really, through the meticulous, often immediate process of transforming a conventional bank into an Islamic one. It's just so clear that this isn't just changing the name on the building. It's a profound shift in every single operational and financial principle.
Indeed, this deep dive really shows us how deeply interwoven Sharia principles are with the actual day-to-day practicalities of banking. It requires this holistic and often, like we said, immediate overhaul. It's really a testament to the comprehensive nature of Islamic finance, demanding this full commitment to ethical and principled operations.
It really makes you think, doesn't it, about the fundamental ethical underpinnings of finance. Next time you encounter an Islamic bank, you'll definitely have a much deeper appreciation for the rigorous framework guiding its operations, recognizing it as a system built on, real economic activity and shared risk. It kind of raises the question, though, if such a profound ethical transformation is possible in banking, what other sectors out there could similarly benefit from reevaluating their core principles to align better with maybe broader societal values?
That's a fascinating thought to leave people with.
That's it for this deep dive. We really hope you found these insights as valuable and thought-provoking as we did. Until next time, keep digging for knowledge.